All right, in this video, I'm going to share with you a recording of a live coaching call that I hosted inside of my Mind Your Movement program community. We went over the exact roadmap to not just find some short-term relief from your pain and injuries, but to get to the true root of it all and fix it for good. We covered some of the biggest mindset blocks that I consistently see holding people back in this regard. And we also went over some very specific guidelines that anyone can implement in their training to see immediate results today. I wanted to make this video to first off give you a ton of value because this call was super valuable to all my clients and just wanted to share that with you. But secondly, I wanted to take back the curtains and show you what it's like to actually be on the other side inside of my Mind Your Movement program so you can get a good understanding of what the community is like and how it would feel to be there. So make sure you take notes on all this because it's a lot of information, and actually take action on it because this was really powerful. And it's essentially the framework I use with all my clients to transform them in the way that you might have seen on my IG stories, or if nothing is up on my stories that day in terms of testimonials, and go check out the results tab in my IG story highlights. And this framework is basically how those hundreds of clients have been able to achieve those results that you see. So with that said, we'll jump right into it. Screen real quick. Okay. Yeah, so the bulletproofing journey, just what exactly leads people into this place of feeling like their body's run down, why they're not performing like they used to, they're getting these aches and pains, and overall the body's just not really as capable anymore, right? So we're gonna go into a little bit of why that happens, and obviously like the solutions, like how do we reverse that? What are the things that we can actually implement? Not only in our training, but in our overall lifestyle and the structure of how we kind of like create our life design so that we can solve that, get back to a place where we're feeling good, we're feeling confident, capable in our bodies. All right. So does anybody have any questions that don't relate at all to that? No worries. If not, we can deep dive into that. I'd rather just make sure I answer any of your questions before I hop into the presentation. Nobody? Okay.
Well, I
Cool.
think we're right now. Wait, what was I gonna say? Oh, am I off mute? Yeah. For the myofascial release stuff, is it because I feel like I could go. Are those like the main ones? I think it was like the hamstring, the quad, the IT, and like the couch stretch. Is that like just the one area of the hamstring that you wanted to target, or like is it beneficial to do all like the hamstring? Because I noticed that like it's like the video says just the one spot, like kind of where the glute ends and the hamstring starts.
Yeah, that's a
um
good question.
but I,
Yeah, yeah,
but I
yeah.
noticed like my whole thing is like mad tight.
Yeah, that's typically the case. So those things that I put in the program itself are just guidelines. Like they're just like the main areas that I know on average most people are going to have a lot of issues with. So you can start there, but then start exploring your body a little bit more. I mean, it's kind of like extra homework, like extra credit, right? Like I
Gotcha.
give you like those basic ones, but then from there you can see, oh, like the outside lateral part of my hamstring is super tight. Actually, I'll just show you guys something really quick. I don't know, I may have shown this to some of you guys, but basically all you have to do, like in terms of like trigger points, just go on Google, search like, okay, hamstring trigger points, right? And then go to images, and there's going to be all these like physio sites, like PT sites that basically have different diagrams of this stuff. So like for instance, you click on this one and you see the X's right here are what you call the trigger points. And then where it's kind of shaded red, wherever it's darkest red is where the referred pain is going to be the strongest. So like, let's say you're feeling pain right here at the back of the knee. Well, maybe you need to not necessarily target this back of the knee area, but you need to release the trigger points where the X's are. Does that make sense? And vice
Yeah.
versa. So you can literally do that for like any part of the body. You can go like, let's say like calf trigger points, and then you go in, you see all these different areas, like people who have like plantar fasciitis, let's say, like they a lot of times need to release up here. you know, and like people with like this again, like back of the knee pain, like this one is centered right on the X. So that's a little bit different than like some of these other patterns, but you can just go have fun on Google and or just explore with your own body and don't even really need Google to kind of tell you what to do.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir. So yeah, I would say just go into the glutes, go into that's actually another place that I'm probably gonna shoot a video for soon. Is the side of the glutes here. So these right here, for me personally, are wildly tight. So you get in there, you kind of just like lay on your side with a lacrosse ball and like just go to town on those. And then another way you could do it too, I'll show you guys real quick, is you could get here on the ground and then you cross your leg over like you're doing a glute stretch. You put the ball right here and then kind of like elevate onto your arms a little bit. And then you just roll like that. And that way it kind of like opens up this glute medius area so that you can actually kind of like dig into it a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
that's like killer for me. That's like
killer.
I've been doing that for a while. My glutes are like ridiculously painful. I get scared of it. But
Yeah.
what I do is actually I do what you do. I cross my foot over my ankle over the knee. But also what I do is I put my feet up on the couch sometimes, both feet, and I lay my entire body weight on the ball. That way I don't have to really do anything with my arms, you know. I just kind of
Yeah.
lay there and sleep, you know.
I
That
like
works
it.
too.
Yeah. No, I like that. Honestly, like however you can do it without putting basically you want to position yourself so that you can relax the most.
Oh, he's gonna.
That's kind of the key with the MFR because you don't want to be tensing up your body or else it's kind of like gonna ruin the point of the whole exercise. And then what you guys could also do, I have this peanut that I made. So basically you just kind of like wrap tape around two balls in like all different directions. And then you could lay on it on the ground. And then this way you can get on both sides of the spine without actually digging into your spine, which obviously is painful. So just another little trick there, but there's so many different ways you can MFR your body. Is crazy. Like there's so many release points and so many different kind of tools you could use to get in there. So really it's just about exploring. Again, like I put those really basic ones in the program because I just want you guys to start somewhere and don't want to overwhelm you guys. But yeah, start exploring on your own and just kind of play around with what feels good and what makes you feel better. Like something what I'll do is like I'll roll out a spot and then I'll go walk like for like 30 seconds to like 60 seconds, just take a few strides, see what it kind of did with my body, see if like my feet are contacting the ground a little bit different, see if my hips are sitting a little bit different. And that way it'll give me a little bit of feedback as to if that was a good point for me or not, that trigger point. And you can just kind of rinse and repeat that way. Like literally I'll have sessions where I go like 60 to 90 minutes just doing trigger point therapy. So you guys could really play around with that. That makes sense, Matt? That answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. You can't really go overboard necessarily with the trigger point release, like with the MFR stuff.
Nah,
Like you can
yeah,
like
yeah.
if I'm doing it for 2 hours straight, like every day, I'm like,
Yeah,
but
yeah. You don't so you don't want to get to a point where like you're using MFR as a crutch instead of working on the movement patterns. Because really, if I had to pick one between movement patterns and MFR, like I would pick the movement patterns because that's gonna be a little bit more long lasting, if that makes sense. Cool. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
because we're trying to like I mean you're trying to improve your relationship with gravity, and just releasing muscles on its own is not going to do the job, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Yeah. The way that I view MFR is like it's like a good tool to open up your body short term. And then when you get into the movement, you're feeling a little bit more limber, you're feeling a little bit more connected. And then you kind of exercise your body in a more active way, kind of like RJ said, against gravity. Because that's really all this posture work is literally priming yourself to hold itself up against gravity better. Because that's the only reason we lose good posture, is because we let gravity kind of sink into our body. Yeah. So anybody else got any MFR related questions? Anything else random?
Do you have like a structure that you like recommend, like putting around like MFR and then like your workouts and like how do you structure your recovery? Because I feel like I don't know whether or not to do it before. Like I also like to take warm baths, and I feel like that increases my blood flow a lot. Just because I feel really locked up, like ever since the accident and stuff, like I still feel a lot of tension and a lot of like locked up muscles really close to my spine. So like, is there a time of day that you recommend most, like when you wake up or when you're about to go to bed or whatever?
That's a really good question. So honestly, I don't have any like hard, fast recommendations. My biggest thing is just doing what works best for you. I can tell you what I do. So I actually am in a period where I'm not rolling out that much because I just started like a really hard training cycle. So I'm just really focused on getting the work done. And it's like 2 to 3 hours a day of like sprinting, plyometrics, like weightlifting, stuff like that. So I'm not as focused on like the recovery, right? But when I was rolling out a lot more, what I would do is I would do it right before my training sessions, kind of like I just said. And that way it would kind of prime my body, open me up, get me a little bit more limber. And then I would kind of like activate those patterns more consciously through the movement. Now, I would also do sessions like maybe like 2 to 3 times a week where I would do it right before bed. And that way it kind of has this way of relaxing my nervous system, kind of easing the tension in my body. And then I would have amazing nights of sleep right after that. So in terms of like recovery protocols, I think the things that make the most sense are doing things that will optimize your sleeping. Because when we're talking about recovery, like sleep is like up here and everything else, like cryotherapy, massage, like all that other shit you hear people do is all the way down here. Sleep is like literally king. So whatever can optimize sleep. So like I said, the MFR right before sleep, that could be a real good way to get things going. Cool. Anybody else? All right. So I guess we'll get into the presentation if nobody has anything else. So this, by the way, this isn't some crazy elaborate presentation. I just wrote some things on Google Docs, so don't be expecting anything crazy. But anyways, I'm gonna pull this up. Okay, so bulletproofing journey. So basically, guys, I'll also pull up this graph that also isn't very pretty that I hand wrote and took a screenshot of. But basically, on this bottom axis right here, we have age. So you see the trend is as we get older, we start to increase that training load. So that's this line right here at the top, right? So things like just having more competition, having better coaching, you have more pressure because like maybe there's like scholarships on the line, maybe you have thoughts of playing pro, or maybe there's just more opportunity for you to be active in your communities, right? So as a result, the amount that you train, like the amount that your body is active, is slowly and steadily increasing, right? And as a result, the level of performance, like how capable your body is, your body's abilities also follow that. So there's this rule that performance is always going to follow the trend of how much and how hard you're training. So this is obviously oversimplified, right? Because there's going to be more ebbs and flows. Like it's not going to go consistently up like this, but let's just say this is kind of like the average. So your training load goes up and up and up. And for most of us here, actually, let me ask you guys instead of just making this assumption. So like Manny, if you're with us, like when would you say was like your peak of training, like the most that you were training, like the most active you were in your whole life?
I'd say probably sometime last year. But yeah, I don't know how similar my situation is to a lot of people, but
And you're how old? You're 26?
20, I just turned 27. So
Okay, so you were 20, 25, 26 when you
yeah,
were training the most.
yeah.
Okay, got you. Makes sense. And Anthony, what about you?
So what's up? Sorry, cut out.
Yeah, when were you training the most in your life? Like when were you at this peak right here where my mouse is, where training load was the high, like you were just the most active?
Probably 19, 20.
19, 20. Okay, makes sense. Okay. So that's kind of like typically what I see as the average. Between like 20 to 25 is when like a lot of people are in college. Maybe some of you didn't go to college, but either way, like you're probably like really active because you got rec league games, you got like just your buddies who want to go to the gym. Like you're just really kind of exercising your body like in a very voluminous way. And as a result, your peak kind of follows that very closely. Like I kind of separated these like maybe a little bit too far. But yeah, your peak is always going to come after the highest training load once you kind of obviously recover from that, right? So what happens here, the reason why this training load doesn't keep going up for most people, like the trend that I see, and anybody like step in here, maybe if they have like a different scenario here, but this starts to go down very sharply because one of two things happens. Either you sustain an injury or a series of injuries, and maybe the injury isn't so bad and you kind of like play on it, you kind of like put band-aids on it, injections, painkillers, braces, etc., and you kind of just play through it, but you slowly decline. So that's number one. Or life happens, and I know some of you are going to really relate to this because life happens, I put that in quotes, and you have like some instance where you graduate from college or you kind of just are like into the real world now, right? And you have to like figure out your finances, or maybe if you played a sport back in college or back in high school and you had like professional dreams, maybe now at this point you kind of realize like, hey, like I'm not actually going to make it pro, or even if I do, I'm going to be paid like chips, because like unless you're in the NBA or a really, really high profile athlete, you're probably not going to make that much money doing it. So whatever the case is, your activity levels right here suddenly drop. Okay. And from there, like your peak might still go up a little bit, but eventually your peak is going to fall as well with that injury or with that sudden drop of activity. And then after that, the reason why this is just so up and down is because it becomes a cycle. So you, after this injury, you recover a little bit, you rest, maybe you saw a PT, or maybe you kind of did like some corrective exercises on your own, right? And then you feel better again. So you go back to training, you go back to being active. And as a result, you see this little peak in performance as well. But then the same thing happens. You get derailed because you get a new pain or injury, or let's say you have a kid, or you get married, or your job requires more work hours, or whatever it may be, you plummet again in terms of your activity. So basically this cycle happens over and over and over again until you reach a bare minimum level of training, of activity. And that's kind of like your new standard, right? That's like your standard of, okay, like I cannot work out less than 3 times a week, or I cannot play basketball less than 1 time a week. And that just kind of becomes your new standard. And I didn't draw this on the graph here, but the thing is if your training load stays consistent, like let's say the training load was just one straight line, your performance is actually going to keep going down. So this is actually one of the first things that I think is the solution here, is this big mindset shift right here. You got to get out of this maintenance fallacy. Like a lot of people I talk to, like a lot of people I see like on Instagram and all that, like I'll ask them what their goals are, and like they'll tell me, "Oh yeah, like I just want to maintain." But literally, there's no such thing as maintaining. Like if you leave a city just on its own, like uninhabited, it's going to go to shit. Like it's going to get overrun by trees and plants, and animals are going to take over, and the weather is going to just erode everything. Like it needs to be upkept in order to maintain itself. So what we have to do is to raise our minimum standard of training, right? So instead of being like, oh yeah, like I just am gonna work out X amount of times per week because I know that's what I need to maintain, we have to actually think, okay, what are the things that I want to do in my life? Okay, I want to be able to play basketball 1 time a week. I want to be able to do jujitsu 2 times a week. I want to be able to power lift a couple times a week, right? And then what we have to do is create a training structure that actually surpasses those things that we want to do in terms of volume and intensity. Because otherwise, you're just, again, like those things, like those activities are going to get harder and harder and harder. Whereas if you train harder than the activities, you're actually going to see that the activities become easier and the activities become effortless compared to what you're doing in your training. Right. So I'm going to stop right there. Does anybody have any questions or I don't know, any comments that pertain to this?
I feel like, well, I don't know who else is my age. I'm 39 years old, but at 39, I'm as strong and as fast as I was in my 20s. And in my 20s, in my late 20s, I was training crazy hard. I was doing crazy amount of training, powerlifting, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, a couple times, like more, more than 10 times a week. And like the reason for me to come to you is because I have just injuries, and I have lifestyle issues. Like I have issue breathing, I have sleep issues, I have pain issues. That's what's holding me back. I feel like, and I feel like in my 39 years of age, I can be better than I was in my mid 20s if I'm able to just recover from my injuries and actually become like functional again. I can be better than my 20s. I truly believe that. But like I said, my issue is like pain, and like just energy levels are kind of down because I sleep so bad because my back issues doesn't let me sleep good. So that's my main issue. That makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And so that's where these other points come in. So posture, and I'll get to these in a second because I see Manny's raising his hand, but basically posture, body function restoration, that's literally the foundation for everything. Because obviously you could train like hell and like train super hard, but if you're not actually building on the right foundation, then yes, like your body is going to go to shit over time. And that's actually why I have this graph that I'll quickly show you guys. So this one basically shows you, I think I cut off the bottom x-axis, but basically this x-axis is how much you train, like units of training time, right? And then this y-axis is your gains. So basically, when you build a better base of posture, joint function, and like overall movement quality, you're going to experience more gains per unit of training that you do. So the same amount of training is going to get you more gains, more performance, more aesthetics, more strength, whatever it is that you're training for. You're going to see a steeper slope of that, and your performance ceiling is also going to be raised. So the base is always posture. Like you can literally increase how efficient you are in your training because of that. But yeah, Manny, what's your question, man?
Yeah, it was actually not a question, but I did want to echo what you said about the mindset thing. I think that's super important, especially for hopefully people here are also interested in like doing this for a long time and being just healthy in general for a long time. And Steph, we actually talked about this in one of our chats about like longevity and some of like the foremost research on that. And this is like a new understanding that we have is that like if you want to be at X level in 30, 40 years, you actually need to be at like 2-3x that level now because you're fighting against time, you're fighting against your aging, you're fighting against natural genetic processes and biological processes. So that's something that's like completely shifted my mentality of like being in like a maintenance phase. Because if you're maintaining, you're actually just losing slowly. Even if you can't tell, it probably puts you worse off than just taking a step back. Which I guess like folks should know by now with the MYM protocol. Sometimes you got to take a step back to go forward.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right on point, man. And I guess to kind of tie that back to what Arjun was saying, so this is the Goldilocks principle. I didn't create this one. I kind of found it online, but basically this is your performance on this axis, this is time, and these lines are the training stimulus, right? So this is your baseline of fitness right here. So when you start training, you're going to go below your baseline of fitness. And that's what people, I think, don't really understand, is that if you want to be better than where you're at right now, your goal shouldn't always be to perform at your peak. Like, you shouldn't always go into the gym and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna max out my bench today. Like, I'm gonna lift more than I've ever lifted before. Or if you're a runner, you shouldn't go and try and like beat your mile time every single day, right? Like, that just doesn't make sense, because you actually need to increase the fatigue in your body, like increase the stress placed on your body over a prolonged period of time in order for you to compensate, right? Because all training is cycles of stress and recovery, where we stress our bodies and then we recover a little bit higher than our baseline. So, RJ, I think potentially what might have been the issue with you, and there's a lot of variables here, right? So this may not be the only thing, but you may have been this red line. You may have created too much fatigue. And basically, as you go through this recovery period, you dug yourself in too deep of a hole and you only get back to your fitness baseline. So over time, you're adding that stress, compiling that accumulation of fatigue, and then you're actually just declining because you're not really adapting positively. So
absolutely, no, I agree. Like, I know for a fact I was not doing any recovery. I was not doing myofascial release. I was not trying to fix my posture. I was just trying to. All I cared about was maintain the same amount of, like, lifting the same amount of weight and doing the classes, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, sparring. Like, just wanted to make sure I kept training. Like, I was obsessed with doing like 13, 14 workouts a week, and did no recovery, zero. And I'm really lucky that my body's not completely destroyed right now. So I feel very lucky. And I found out about posture and functional training. Yeah, I was going crazy, man. I wanted to be a professional fighter. Kind of delusional, but anyway, we all feel like we have delusional stuff when we're in our 20s. But I don't know. The point is, yeah, like, now that I'm like definitely getting into my posture, fixing my posture, and working on a lot of recovery stuff and myofascial release and the program that I'm doing. I'm really hoping, I feel optimistic that I'm 39 years old. By the time I'm 40, 41, 42, I can still hang with the young guys in their 20s in the boxing ring and, whatever I'm doing. I really feel like I can do that. And yeah, anyway, I'm not on rant anymore. But that's my point,
Hell yeah, man. Nah, I support it 1000%, bro. And like, that's what you're here for. Like you said, I think really kind of going backwards a little bit, working on the foundational things that maybe you missed out on in the early parts of your life, early parts of your athletic career. Like, you can really surpass where you were before. Like, I really truly think that's possible. So looking at this graph again, it's like, what other people do will well, I guess what I see most people do is either the yellow line or the red line. They either train too hard or they train too little. So what we want to do is obviously Goldilocks, right? Just right, the green line. And that one, you're creating a good amount of fatigue where on a week-to-week basis, like, you're feeling worked, like you're feeling like your body is tired. But then you will have like, and we'll talk about this in a little bit if we have time, but then you'll have like a week period after maybe like 3 to 4 weeks of going hard consistently. You'll have a week period where you deload. You'll take off the training stimulus and you'll really allow your body to recover so that it can come above your fitness baseline. And that's what people call super compensation, right? And so there's always going to be fluctuations in your performance because your body doesn't, basically, to say it in a funny way, your body wants to be a weak piece of shit. your body doesn't like being at a high level of performance because it takes a lot of resources. So you have to make sure that you cycle your training accordingly. Like you have periods where you push, and then you have periods where you're chilling. Like you can still train, but you're chilling out, you're letting your body do its thing, letting your body adapt. So that's the Goldilocks principle. We got to find this just right here. And we can't let life get in the way. We can't let other bullshit kind of like deprioritize training. Like if you really want to be good and do this for a long time, do this training thing for a long time, be active for a long time, you got to train your body, like Manny said, because it's only downhill from here. So, anybody got any questions on that before I move on? Any comments? It's okay if not. Okay, cool. So,
Wait, sorry, real quick. I was
yeah,
gonna ask, like, how do you know if you're training too much? Because I feel like I'm always like a pendulum swing going back and forth between training too much and then not training enough. Like, in terms of intensity, like there are times where I push really hard and then it takes me more than the 2 days to recover before the next workout. Or like I'm not training very hard and then it almost feels like I can work out that same workout like every day, but I'm not really pushing myself. So like how should I feel when I'm actually pushing myself like the right amount?
got you. Yeah, that's a really, really, really good question because I was literally about to cover that. So essentially, you have to understand that training stress accumulates, right? So I think I have a graph on that. Actually, forget about this because I kind of already talked about that. But basically, training stress accumulates. And it's okay if you go into a workout and you're not sweating like crazy, you're not like feeling like super fatigued or sore the next day. Like, that's actually good. Like, in the same way, I don't know if you guys, maybe some of you have heard, like, when you're doing hypertrophy training, like you're training to build more muscle, you don't want to go to failure on every single set. You actually want to leave 2, maybe 3 reps in the tank. So let's say you pick a weight and like you can actually go to failure and do that 10 times. You actually instead, every set, you want to do that 7 or 8 times. And that will actually, funny enough, allow you to accumulate more reps over the course of that whole workout and over the course of like maybe that whole training cycle. Right. So I think it's the same thing like in the macro of training. Like you want to be at a place where maybe you're hitting like a 6 out of 10 RPE or like maybe even a 7 out of 10, depending on what exactly it is you're doing and what part of the training cycle you're in. But basically, you need to sometimes err on the side of not training yourself so hard every single workout. I would rather train consistently and do that. Like maybe I can go high intensity, right? Like I'll go and do like a 30-meter sprint, but like in one workout, but instead of doing 10 of them, maybe I'll err on the side of 3 of them. And maybe, yeah, I could have done 4 at that same high level of intensity, but I'm just going to do 3 just because I know that I'm still going to be training more that same week. Like maybe I have a 200-meter sprint on Friday, and maybe I have like, I don't know, like hill sprints on Wednesday, right? So you can't get over eager because what most people do is this right here. They will spike up in activity level. They'll reach this peak right here, and then they'll burn out or they'll get injured or their body will feel like shit. And then their activity will slowly drop until it reaches this bottom point. And then they're like, oh my God, like I'm not doing anything. I'm barely training. I need to train really hard to compensate. And then they peak again really quick, super big spike in activity levels. And then same thing, they burn out. Right. So I think that's like the overall like high level concept, Saba, to answer your question. But really, like in practicality, what you need to do is structure your training accordingly. So you need to actually plan out weeks at a time, months at a time. For maybe months isn't like totally crucial if you're not going to be an Olympic level athlete, right? But like at least 1 month ahead, you should have on paper what exactly you're going to do, how you're going to progress your training in that month, and just know exactly like from there, like, okay, I did this month and it worked out. I feel like my body is kind of like feeling a little bit better, feeling stronger. It's performing a little bit better. Now let me turn on the intensity again. Maybe like add more difficult variations, add like more intensity, and just kind of overall progress in the next month. So I'll stop there and see if you have any follow-up questions.
Yeah, to add on to your point, man, is I want to say that when I observe the best athletes in the world, I think Russians have the best program. They have the best wrestlers and the best boxers and everything else because they focus on consistency. They don't do like they don't work out insanely hard, but they just do a lot of play fighting throughout the week. That's why, because of that, they're less sore and they can get more practices in per month than the American athletes. That's why you might have a freak athlete like, I forgot his name, a couple of guys here and there who like win gold in the Olympics in America, but generally Russians have the best athletes because they get less burnout and they get less injuries because they do a lot of play fighting,
Yeah, they don't always go at 100%. Yeah, that makes a lot
absolutely.
of sense. Yeah. That's exactly, that's on point. Saba, anything else?
No, I think that covers it. I think like I noticed like also being the like one of very few women like in the group, I noticed that like I do have to structure my workout or like my intensity of workouts around my menstrual cycle. Like there are times where the same workout, if I do it like right now, I'm currently like in my PMS, like portion of my menstrual cycle, and I noticed that if I work harder, like it it really throws off like a lot of my hormones, and like I end up breaking out more, and I have like a lot of other issues that end up coming up. So I have to be like, I don't know, like really aware that I'm not pushing myself too much like as my period approaches. And then once my period has started, I notice it's really important for me to like sleep more than normal, like more than the 8 hours, like probably closer to 10 hours a day, in order to like recover from just the same everyday activities. So I don't know, it's something that I'm trying to figure out myself also, because I notice my appetite changes throughout my menstrual cycle as well, and like my motivation levels. So I think that's something like that I just have to figure out like how my body works specifically. But yeah, I think what you were saying like about how, like I guess what both of you guys were saying about not going too hard all the time and really being consistent and just like doing what feels good, and not doing like I don't know, I never really like enjoyed the gym, like I don't love going there and like working out, but I think doing just enough and like just showing up, I think is the most important. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Saba. I think the whole menstrual cycle thing is actually something that's really interesting. My girlfriend actually, funny enough, is here, and maybe she could give you like a little bit of insight right now on that. But basically, from what I understand, there's certain points in your cycle where you're more suited to do different types of training. So, for instance, like she might be able to tell you better than me. You could come, Andrea, but basically, like, let's say like when you're ovulating, you might be better suited to do strength work, or when you're like actually going, let me not even do this. you could
Hi
go.
guys.
Hi.
So Andy,
Hi, Baba. Hi guys. Super nice to meet all of you. Yeah, just a little bit of insight. Like, yes, I think it's super important to kind of like structure yourself around your cycle. And funny enough, like I found that even Steph is like training super hard and he has these deload weeks when he's intentionally like taking away from the intensity. What is a bit different for us is that we tend to be better in certain activities through certain phases. So in the first 2 weeks, you can really ramp up the intensity, do runs, do high intensity interval training, things like that. And then after your ovulation window, you will notice that your energy starts to go down. That's when it is ideal to do more like slow strength work. And it depends person by person. I don't feel like it affects me much. It affects some women more, But generally, like having more like intensity and running and high intensity interval training the first 2 weeks, still working on strength, but maybe like be more dynamic overall. Then after your ovulation, be like more like slow and strength focused. And then once those days comes that might be a little harder for you, then you can take a couple days and go. I really like to go swimming. I think is amazing, or walks, or do the same lifts, but like do half the amount of sets that you would usually do. I feel like those things work really well for me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like I definitely have more power and strength during my ovulation phase. And then I cannot do cardio to save my life when it's time. Like, if I'm getting cramps, like, I'm not moving my lower body like that at all. So I feel that.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate all the men for tagging along for this journey. Maybe you have a in your life who can use this information. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, Saba, like
Nowadays, we don't know what is a woman, what is a man, right? I'm just kidding.
sorry
For all the
for
work that's going on.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, and I think honestly, like the guys in here can also kind of take some knowledge from that as well, because although we don't have like the same kind of cycles, I do think that we should cycle our training within bigger periods, like let's say like of a month, right? Because what I see a lot of people doing is they'll work out chest, tries, legs, right? And they'll have some variability in terms of like how they're moving, like what movement patterns they do, but there's no variability in terms of like the energy systems that they're training. So they're always doing these same lifts for hypertrophy, but they're not tapping into their aerobic capacities. They're not getting out and doing like a sprint or anything explosive, right? So I think, and this is actually something that I put on here. So training variability, your body responds to training, obviously, but I think the more useful way to think about it is that the body adapts to randomness of training. And that's because it's a survival mechanism, because your body is going to want to be prepared for literally anything that comes about, any potential danger or whatever it may be. So it overcompensates. And when you just do the same workouts all the time, your body kind of feels like it can let go, it can relax, and it lets go of those physiological adaptations it made. Because again, like I said, the body wants to be weak naturally. So it just lets go of those adaptations because they cost resources to maintain. So yeah, I think that's as a general thumb, like we should all have some kind of cyclical nature to our training instead of just doing the same exact things month after month, week after week. That makes sense? Anybody got any questions? I know I'm talking a lot here, so I want to really make sure I open the floor for you guys. If you guys have any specific things you want to add or any questions, anything like that. Heard somebody clear their throat. Doesn't mean you want to talk. Okay. All right. So what else do we have here? And this is another point too. So Saba asked, how does she know how hard she should train? And is she training hard enough? That's where you need to test, because you literally don't know unless you're testing. Like you can kind of have an idea, like, yeah, you can kind of just like undershoot just a little bit, like what maybe your maximum threshold for like a day or a week might be, and just accumulate that stress over time and then have like a week of recovery, right? You can do that, of course, but I think a better way to go about it, instead of going by feel, is to actually test your performance. So the example that I wrote out here is that I don't know anything about car racing, but I know that those dudes don't go out and do a Daytona 500 every single week, right? They focus on fine-tuning their car, and then they do these little mini tests to actually see where they're at. Like, for instance, like I know they kind of like test like the maximum revolutions of the tire. as like one example of a test, right? Instead of actually going on the road and again, like driving a whole race, because that's going to be very energy demanding. So with your testing, a lot of times what's cool too is that you can actually incorporate it into your training. So like for instance, like I'm actually in a testing week myself for track, and what we're doing are like, I'll give you an example, are like 30-meter sprints. We were timing them today and basically just seeing like what the baseline is for our fitness, because this is the first time that we're testing this season. And it also serves as a whole workout in itself, because this is a down week. I only needed like, I think it was we did 30 meters. Whereas before, like the 3 weeks before this, when I was actually pushing, maybe I would do like 5 or 6. You know, so I'm still training. It's a deload week, but I'm still training. It's lighter, and I'm able to test at the same time to get my baseline. So that's one example of a test. Another thing that might be relevant for you, if I don't know, let's say you want to dunk really, really well, you want to be able to do trick dunks. Maybe on your rest week, on your deload week, you go ahead and test your vertical jump. Like how high can you touch off of a standing vertical? And then another one that's probably even more relevant to like actual dunking is your running jump. So you run up to like your plant, like maybe like a few steps, like 5, 6 steps, and then you get into the jump and see how high you can touch. So when it comes to testing, it's all about what measures can we use that are most similar to the actual event, without necessarily always having to do the event itself. Because the last thing I'll say here is, for me, I'm not necessarily trying to jump like 7, 8 right now, like my very maximum peak right now. I'm just trying to kind of slowly build up to that point where I'm able to do that. Because again, like we said, the body does not want to be at that high level of performance for a long time. So instead of testing my maximum high jump and seeing if that improves month to month, I'm going to test some of these other variables to see how those are impacted by the way that I train and recover. So does that make sense? And I guess like one more thing, like this little example I have here. So if you want to perform better on a basketball court, you shouldn't use a bench press as a measure, because bench press doesn't really say much about how you perform on the basketball court. So that's why I said use measures like vertical jump or like a sideline to sideline sprint test instead. Any questions? Anything to add? Okay, cool. So time is it? Oh, we got 10 more minutes. All right, so last thing to cover here, I guess perfect timing, is to just rest adequately. We already kind of covered this a little bit, but basically the point is that it's okay to have periods where you rest less than others. Like again, like right now I'm in a cycle where, well, I guess I just finished it up, but we were working 6 days a week, just 1 day of rest, and the rest we were just pushing hard. But then we have this strategic week where we're cutting the volume about in half, maybe a little bit less than that, still keeping intensity pretty high. Like I'm not going to go and do a 30-meter sprint at like 80% of my max intensity. I'm still going to do it at 100, but I'm going to do less of them. So like Anthony, for you, if you want to do like powerlifting lifts, I would probably, instead of doing 5x5 on your deload week, I would maybe do 2x5, or even like 2x3, up the intensity a little bit and cut down the volume at the same time. So that's an example of that, because basically you can't let your performance debt grow too much without paying it off, or else it's kind of like just accruing interest. It gets harder and harder to pay it off, and it compounds. And over time, that's why you get to a place where you feel burnt out and your body feels all these aches and pains. They just kind of accumulate over time, right? So as a general rule, I've kind of already been saying this, but don't make hard training pushes for more than 3 to 4 weeks at a time without having a bit of a deload week. Again, that could be as simple as just doing the same exact thing that you were doing in that training cycle, but cutting the amount of volume in half. So typically I would cut the sets in half, not the reps. So like if you were doing 3 by 10 of everything, I would do either 1 sets by 10 of everything, as just a very oversimplified example. And yeah, last thing is obviously just to think about like workout recovery from day to day as well, because we've been talking on a very kind of like macro level. So bare minimum once a week, you should have times in your schedule where you sit and literally do nothing. And by nothing, I mean no phone, no headphones in your ear. Like, don't even try and meditate. Like, don't try and do any activity. Literally, no mental engagement. Just sit and do nothing. And for me, that's been a game changer. And funny enough, like, I feel like we're kind of always feeling like we need to push, always feeling like we need to work, always feeling like we need to grind. But the better that we can recover, the more leverage that we get from each little unit of work. So like for me in my business right now, obviously like I'm trying to juggle training like a madman and also doing business things. When I actually take the time to like on a Sunday, go out to the beach or go out in a mountain or something, literally just like hike or literally just like be by myself, I come back to that week way more recharged, feel like I'm way more productive, and everything I do just holds more weight. So if you're not doing that already, highly, highly, highly recommend that. And even like having a period like that every day, where even if it's 10 to 15 minutes, like I know everybody has 10 to 15 minutes, just sit there, no phone, no stimulation, no nothing, literally just let your nervous system chill the hell out. Because all these things, Netflix, social media, even sometimes talking to somebody like that can all stimulate your nervous system and prevent you from actually maximizing your recovery. So try and fit that in. I recommend 15 minutes a day, and then once a week have a period of 1 to 3 hours at least where you're just straight up doing nothing. So that's about it for recovery. And yeah, I think that's about it, guys. So yeah, how was that? Did you guys like this? Do you guys want me to do more stuff like this in the future? Was this helpful? Any feedback would be good.
Yeah, it was very helpful. You touched on a lot of good things I probably haven't heard before, maybe haven't heard in a long time. I'm sorry, I haven't really talked much. I'm kind of under the weather, but I've been really absorbing what everybody's been saying, what you've been saying, and it's nice to know that maybe we all kind of have the same or similar struggles. So maybe if you're going through something and you think it's like, damn, this is kind of weird, or maybe I'm not really understanding what I'm doing or what I should be doing, you're not really alone, and you have people around you that are maybe going through the same thing. And then you have someone like Steph who can guide you in the right direction. So this was really good. It's my first meeting, because usually I'm working, but I went home early today, so maybe it's a win at the end of the day. So thank you for that.
Awesome, man. Yeah, my pleasure. And like you said, I think the reason why I've built this community the way that I did is because I know a lot of people are going through similar things. A lot of people are in kind of similar points in their life. Like, obviously, we have a bit of an age range, right? But I think we're all here for the same reason. We all want to be absolute beasts, be able to do whatever the hell we want to do with our body without kind of feeling it break down, without feeling like it's not really kind of like working the way that it should, right? So I think you hit it on the head, Franco, and I'm glad you're here. First time is the best time, and hopefully stay consistent from here and just get you guys all here together so we could share in what we're struggling with and obviously provide solutions for each other. So yeah, thanks again for coming out, man. Manny, what's up?
Yeah, I was gonna say probably the most important thing for me as kind of like my next thing to focus on is what you said about like basically creating training blocks. I feel like that's probably the biggest gap that probably a lot of us in here are having, is we're all kind of past that like beginner stage where anything you do, you can pretty much recover from. You can't even push that hard, to be honest, and you see a lot of like reward and gain from that. But once you kind of hit that next phase of training into like the intermediate side, you definitely need more structure. And then yeah, like specifically balancing that with like lifestyle stuff, because that makes the structure even more helpful and kind of keeps you more on track. So yeah, I think that's super valuable to think about.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of the whole lifestyle thing too, like all of us have something else that we're doing outside of just training. Like it would be nice if we could just train and not have to do anything else, right? But I think the reality is we all have like different things in our life that we're taking care of, right? So the more that we can kind of reduce our cognitive load in terms of like how we're training and basically kind of just automate that whole process, right? And I mean, I guess that's partly what I'm here for, is to help you guys out with that. But basically, if we could just have our program, know exactly what we're going to do on the day, on the whole week, on the whole month, and we don't have to go into the gym and kind of think about that, like that just saves ourselves so much bandwidth, not only time, but like just mental bandwidth in our head to be able to allot to other things that maybe are more important, or maybe just that you need to kind of focus on in life, you know? So that's the thing that's been really helpful for me, because even as a coach myself, like I wasn't always kind of being as strategic with my training, you know? So yeah, Matt say he's here to automate his training his whole life. Yes, sir. But yeah, guys, I think that's about it from my end. It was dope to have you guys all here, and hopefully we could come together more often. I mean, we do these every week, so why not? And maybe I could deep dive into one of these topics. If anybody has any ideas right now, shoot. But otherwise, I'll talk in the group. I'll text in the group and ask you guys maybe what might make sense to deep dive even further into next week.
Hey, I got a question, man. How old are you?
Can you guess?
Well, I mean, black people age very well, so I can't really guess. But let's say you're 36, 35.
Wow, I'm gonna be. That's gonna.
Is that a compliment? Is that a compliment or is not?
That's a. I don't even know how to take it. Like, part of me thinks that's a compliment because, like, I'm beyond my years, I guess. But then part of me is like, damn, I look that old. So
No,
you're
no,
mature and
Okay,
you're
okay, okay.
knowledgeable.
No, the age thing is because you carry yourself in a very like humble and like experienced way. That's why I say 34. You know,
okay,
otherwise I don't know.
okay,
Shit.
makes sense. I'm 27.
Damn, bro.
Yes, sir. I'm 27.
Congratulations.
Saba raising her eyebrows too.
Damn, man, that's impressive. That's impressive. You know a lot of stuff.
Old man.
I really I only thought you were like closer to your 30s because like I feel like that's when people are like, oh crap, I'm not in my 20s. I gotta like pull myself together, you know? And I feel like I don't know, like the people I'm around, I'm 24, so like I'm still around people who get sloshed every weekend and like don't care about anything else and are like literally only going to the workout and go to the gym so that they can drink more on the weekend. So like you know, like to see that transition and to be around more mature people, like I naturally feel like that means older, but also age is completely irrelevant. Your body and your mind age is what matters the most.
Facts. Yeah, appreciate you, Saba.
And like I didn't mean no insult by that, but I'm just saying like
Yeah.
take care of yourself really well. And like I'm a fitness coach myself, so I'm learning from you to apply your principles to my clients better. And like I said, like she said, I didn't party in my younger years. That's why I think I'm a little bit healthier than people, my friends who are my age right now. Their bodies are kind of breaking down. Whereas I feel like I'm gonna be a complete beast, but by the time I'm in my mid 40s, I really feel like I can. And I really look forward to proving that to everybody doing this program and healing from my injuries. So thank you so much, bro.
Yeah, thank you guys all for trusting in me to help you out, even though I'm only 27. And yeah, we'll keep on moving with the progress, guys, and keep on getting after it. So anything I could do, let me know. I'm here to support, here to serve. And yeah, if you guys have any other questions, shoot. But I actually do have another call right now. So if you have any other questions, just shoot them in the Discord and we'll talk soon. And I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Steph.
Peace out. Thank you.
No doubt. Thank you guys.
All right, man. Peace out. Have a good day.
Peace, guys.
That was sick, bro. See you in there.
Yeah, I'll see you in the meeting, right?
Yeah, we'll get it right now. I'll see you there.
All right, peace, bro.
Peace.
All right, that's a wrap for the video. Hope you enjoyed that live recording of the coaching call. And if you did get any value from this and you want to see more like it in the future, just drop a like, drop a comment. Let me know how it was. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll get back to every single one of you. And if you want to be part of the conversation and actually join in on these discussions, asking your own questions, engaging with the community you just saw, book in a call down below. Link is in the description and you can chat with us to get you enrolled. But if you're not sold yet, go watch my other videos. Go watch the one that's highlighted on my YouTube channel. Take a look at all the results on the highlights tab on my IG at AirDuvee. So go sell yourself. And once you're ready to make that leap and actually level up and start making some real big boy gains, you know what to do. Either DM me on IG or just book in a call down below and we'll get you all signed up. See you on the other side.